I wish I'd have done it, I didn't. When I was up there, there was all kinds of stuff stored here and stuff there. And the original, I assume the original clock, parts of the original clock face are up there, and they're made out of wood. I think there's enough you could put together to make one, but I'm gonna have to go up. You need to check and see that those don't get thrown away.
I'll try.
If they haven't already. Because the steps are a little, if you haven't been up there. We opened it up for the 125th anniversary. We had tours of the courthouse, and we took people up there. The insurance company probably wouldn't let us do that today, because the steps are not, they're stairs, but they're steep, and they're a little wobbly. Because you have to get up to right here to get to the bell. And then there's a rod that goes up to the floor and makes the clock turn. And then this is the Lady Justice. When you walk up the steps this way, you can see that limestone goes all the way through the wall. And the walls are, I think, about 18 inches thick. And that was all quarried probably somewhere down in southern Indiana. I don't have any. You think of anything else I should add? We didn't practice, he just told me to ramble, yeah.
I remember from going up there, and it's interesting that that box, that decorative box that the mechanism is in, has a drive shaft that comes out, and it goes into, connects with gears that go to the other faces.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's just.
And the rods, when I got there, the rods were broken early.
Oh, okay.
Attached. And so I went down to the lumber yard and got some closet rods, and it worked. And if you ever see the book Raintree County by Russ Lockridge, if you open the inside cover, it's this courthouse. And he also talks in the book about the clock always stuck at 9.
Oh, right, yeah.
And well, we blew that theory. These chimneys are now gone. There's only one chimney on the building, and it's on the other side. And
So if they decide to do a Back to the Future 4, Tom Saunders is going to be one of the guest stars.
well, I remember as a kid, and you guys all probably do too, when Santa and the sleigh used to come down. And I was hoping it was there when I got it. There was a candle about as tall as this room made. It was homemade, made out of screen wire. That used to go out, I guess, I don't even remember the camera, but it used to go out the top of the tower at Christmas, and there used to be a flagpole out the top of the tower. But it caused the roof to leak, so when they took those out. But I was glad to see Santa and his reindeers came back.
Well, and you had a role in that, didn't you?
I kept saying they need to do it, but it was the mayor that made it happen.
I have pictures in the slideshow. Well, there's a real famous painting that Elizabeth Schaefer did of Christmas at the courthouse, and then I've got a picture of a recent decoration effort at the courthouse today, and so looks pretty good.
That jogged my memory. I put the first Christmas tree in the hallway.
Oh, did you? Oh my!
Went to Hugh Jacobs, and he gave us a good deal on a Christmas tree. There was several advantages of working, and you get to see the Hugh Jacobs and Jim Maddox every day going to coffee. And I didn't know either one of those gentlemen when I started, and I can say they became good friends. When Jim Maddox, 2 stories, when I ran for the legislature, I had a beard, and Jim called me across the street to the bank one day, and he said, "Tom, I've been trying to get everybody to talk to you, but nobody will do it." He says, "I guess I'm going to be the one." He says, "You need to lose the beard." And I said, "Well, my youngest son's never seen me without it." Because when I first became county assessor, I looked really young. And, I had to go open lock boxes. People's checking accounts were frozen until the assessor came in and did all this documentation. And they go, "Are you old enough to do this?" So I grew a beard to look older. So 26 years later, Jim calls me across the street and he says, you need to lose it. And I said, well, my wife kind of likes it. My sons never see me without it. And he said, Tom, there needs to be a contrast against you and David Copenhagen. You shouldn't have taped that. Anyway. I said, he said, Tom, we only see your faces, and you both got beards. He said, I'll give you $500 today for the campaign if you go home and lose the beard. So I went home, shaved the beard off, came back with my hand out. Campaign got $500. And every 2 years after that, I'd walk during the election. I'd go in and say, Jim, I'm thinking about growing that. And he'd write the campaign a check for $500. In the olden days, when bankers could do what they wanted to do, I was working at the courthouse making $8,000 a year. I wanted to buy a house. And I went into the bank at Louisville, and Lee Atkinson was the banker, and he was also my political advisor, because he talked me into running for trustee, and then he talked me into running for county treasurer, and I got beat as county treasurer. And so when I wanted to buy the house, I went in and filled out all the paperwork, and he said, Tom, I can't do it. He said, on paper, you're not good. He said, well, I want you to go to Newcastle, and I want you to walk in the bank and tell Jim Maddox I wouldn't loan you the money. So I go to Newcastle. When I'm at the courthouse one day, I walk across the street, and Mr. Maddox asked me how I was, and I said, fine. I said, I want to buy a house. He said, well, we're going to finance it for you, aren't we? And I said, no. Lee said I wasn't any good on paper. He can't loan me the money. He said, how much you need? And I said, $19,000. He said, you go back to Louisville. So when I walked in the door, Lee goes, sign these papers. And I said, well, what's that all about? He goes, well, Tom, I just work for the bank. I have my rules and regulations I have to abide by. He owns you. He likes you. You're going to get the money. So, during the course of my time at Courthouse, I met a lot of nice people. And they had lowered the ceiling. They had lowered the ceilings in all the downstairs offices, and the ceilings above it, there's like 18 feet above the ceilings, and the metal work is beautiful. But it's all covered up. And so when I was county assessor, I went and painted on the weekend. I went up and painted the office, painted it a light gray. We had orange carpet, which I hated, and I had a ceiling fan put in. And I was the only man in the courthouse. The rest of them were all females. And one of the office holders came to the door and said, who told you could do that? And I said, well, nobody told me. I did it on my own. So now, it was 2 weeks later, her office was painted the same color as mine. And she had 2 new ceiling fans in her office. And then it ended up, everybody's office got painted the same color as mine. And they all got ceiling fans. Because when I went there, it was all institutional green. And the floors, I don't think, had been polished for I don't know how long. And, but it's been taken care of as well as they could take care of. The flower pots on either side of the statue out front had been stolen or disappeared. I also oversee the cemetery at Louisville. And we had a couple of flower pots that the families weren't taking care of, weren't filling them. They sat empty for about 4 years, so I moved those pots to the courthouse. There's 2 on the east side and 2 on the west side. So and we used to have, Newcastle was Rose City, so we had rose bushes around the circle driveway. But the salt that you put on the driveway killed the roses. It's also eaten the columns on either side of the door. I don't know how you fix that.
Is there just one rain tree now, the one that was recently planted, or are there others that I'm forgetting?
There was one large rain tree on the northeast, and it died, but they planted, when John McGrady was here, I think they planted 3 or 4. They almost cut the rain tree down here a month ago.
Oh, gee.
Somebody called.
Yeah. well, we're gonna plant something else there. They go, no, you don't understand. Somebody called me and said, how old is that tree, Tom? And I go, well, I know it's John McGrady, and he's probably not been there for 35 years. So. But they're not common to this part of the state anyway. They're hard to grow, our winters are tough on them. So I appreciate the fact they do reach out. I guess I'm a courthouse historian because they do. And one time we had county auctions, and they'd send surplus stuff out to the highway department for an auction. And I went out there to be nosy, and I go, you're not selling that, you're not selling that. You guys said, each office had oak hall trees, and then these, what I call prison furniture, the old hickory furniture. There was a lounge down in the ladies' restroom that they could lay on if they weren't, a fainting couch, I'll call it. And there were some large oak chairs, and they sent them out to be sold, and I got them back. I started that trend too because they were real dark and dingy, and so I took a couple home and refinished them, and then I sent one out to be refinished, and they questioned that claim I turned in. But then they all ended up doing it. But when they moved to the Justice Center, a lot of that oak furniture went across the street. And basically, probably should have stayed in the original courthouse because it was probably all bought in 1905 when they did the addition. So.
Now the little miniature courthouses, didn't you have a role in that too? Or the miniature courthouses, like the paperweights.
Oh,
we've got some of those still here.
Yeah, like the village.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was Anna Goodwin and I. We thought that'd be a great fundraiser. We ended up getting stuck with several. And then we also did a little box that had that courthouse.
Okay, we still have some of those left, don't we? We got 5 left. Okay, well, if you're interested, let us know.
And they're on sale for what? $25? $4? Oh, man, that's more than I thought. Anyway, there were only 300 of those made, but anyway, that was a wild idea I had too. But there was one thing that came to me as you said that. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for taking the time and the money to fund this, and hopefully it'll stay another 125 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do I have any questions?
I've said it before and I'll say it again, he's probably the most interesting person I've ever met. He just is amazing. Well, I put this together, Order in the Courthouse. I hope you enjoy it. PowerPoint presentation. There have been 3 courthouses. The first one was a log cabin kind of style courthouse. The original survey of the town shows that Block 12 be set aside for a courthouse and other county buildings. This block was bound on the north by Broadway or Broad Street, on the west by Cross Street, now 12th Street, on the east by Meridian Street, now Main Street, and on the south by an alley on the Platte, later called Central Avenue. The first courthouse was authorized by the commissioners in 1822 and occupied in 1824. Now the gentleman who built it is there on the left. On February 16, 1799, Byram Cadwalder was born in Bedford County, Virginia. About 24 years later, he came to Henry County and was credited with building Henry County's first courthouse, a log structure measuring 20 by 26 feet. He reportedly did the work for George Barnard, who is at the right, for the contract price of $247. It's going to cost a little more, isn't it, by the time you guys get done with renovations?
$5 million.
$5 billion. Oh my gosh! Wow. George Barnard later became the second mayor of Newcastle. There was nowhere for the grand jury to sit in the first courthouse. It served Henry County for 7 years, and Stephen Elliott's quoted as saying in the Heller books, when there was a case tried, the jury had to climb up the rickety steps to an upstairs portion for deliberations. There was no place for the grand jury to sit. The first grand jury that I ever served on sat on a log. So we're going way back when things were a little primitive. I found this out just doing some research online. There's only one log courthouse left in Indiana. There were about 44 built. The only surviving structure is a courthouse not far from here, built in Salisbury, which was the first county seat of Wayne County in 1811, and now located in Centerville, which was also a county seat of Wayne County before Richmond got so big. The initial buildings on the courthouse square, believe it or not, included a stray pen. The records of the county commissioners contain information regarding the first courthouse, jail, and stray pen or pound. These were the initial county buildings on the public square in Newcastle. An 1824 act of the state legislature had made it mandatory for county commissioners to build pens or pounds with good and sufficient fence, gate, lock, and key where all stray horses, mules, and asses above 2 years old be taken up within 20 miles of the courthouse, and they shall be kept there. Now, if you can visualize that would look quite a bit different than today, wouldn't it? And that's the gentleman that wrote the historic Henry County books. It's a series of 3. They're orange in color, and you can look at them at the library, or you can come here and look at them. They're not for sale anymore, unfortunately. Now we got privy to info on one more building. In addition to the courthouse, the 2 office buildings, the jail, and the stray pen, the public square contained one more building. It is not labeled on the map nor mentioned in the county histories. However, it is shown on the 1857 map. It is not hard to conjecture how it was used. It was not large, but in close proximity to all the other buildings, none of which had basements, running water, or plumbing. The city then had no sewer system. The county officials surely had to take some moments from their work, and surely this unidentified building was a public privy or official outhouse. The first courthouse, the part of it, the log structure, later became a weaver's workshop. And we see Samuel Graham here, and we have some of his coverlets upstairs at the museum. He was from England. Get closer here so I can read this. Originally from Manchester, United Kingdom. He left England in 1823 at the age of 18 with the onset of the Industrial Revolution. One among many English hand weavers in search of work, Graham arrived in New York first, and sometime during the 1840s he settled in Newcastle, Henry County, Indiana. In 1861 he moved to Yorktown, Delaware County, Indiana. With the outbreak of the Civil War, he took his family back to England and returned to Indiana after the war. In Newcastle, Graham acquired a 2-story log building, a former courthouse located on the public square, where he established his growing business. Graham was a highly productive weaver. By 1850, Graham was one of 6 Indiana weavers mentioned as manufacturers in the 1850 manufacturers census. Ranging in complexity of patterns from basic to extremely complex, all of Graham's coverlets were double, I have no idea what that word is, woven in his favorite hues of brilliant reds and bright blues. His signature prior to 1850 was an eagle with spread wings and the date, while in later years he used an urn of flowers with a Newcastle, Henry County, Indiana inscription and date. No coverlets woven upon his return from England have been found. But again, here's a picture of what we have upstairs, and if you'd like to see him, just let us know. Beautiful, beautiful coverlets. So I always thought that was interesting that the first courthouse was used in that way. Now we go to the second courthouse, and this painting you see as you're walking into the museum. Actually, it's out here behind us. You guys may have noticed it as you walked in. In 1831, the commissioners ordered a new courthouse built, and by 1836 it was accepted and occupied. The second courthouse faced Meridian, now Main Street. It was a 2-story brick structure, 40 feet square, and it was located in the center, north, and south of lot number 1. I'm forgetting to use the microphone. Everybody hear me okay? If you're hearing me okay, I'll just keep going. The cupola was 8 feet in diameter to rise 20 feet high, 8 feet of the distance to be enclosed with Venetian blinds. The cupola was to be surmounted by a suitable cap, from which was to be raised a spear bearing a wooden ball 10 inches in diameter, nicely gilt, and still above this vane, and higher yet across, with a gilt ball on each end. The whole was to be surmounted with a neat cap on top of the spear. And that detail is in the history book, Heller history books. Now we're going to take you back to informal gatherings around the stove in the second courthouse. George Hazard, who wrote a series of history books called Hazard's History of Henry County, in the late 1850s, George speaking of himself here, I have many times seen when a boy of 12, and that's him, gathered around the south fireplace, James Reardon, Charles Test, Caleb Smith, O.P. Morton, a young lawyer from Centerville, Yehu Elliott, Martin L. Bundy, and others, and if winter nights eating apples brought in by Asher Woodward, top right, and these sessions lasted late, I know, for I had to select people into the Taylor house. And it's interesting to note that the Oliver Morton he's talking about would become Indiana's 14th governor and a friend of President Lincoln. And there's Henry County's first settler, who they said was the guy that brought the apples. And there's George Hazard on the left. And George Hazard was one of the founders of Citizen State Bank, which is one of the oldest in the state of Indiana. On the eve before Valentine's Day in 1864, a fire started in one of the chimneys. And back then, before fire hydrants and powerful hoses, once a fire started, it was hard to stop. The roof and the cupola were much weather-beaten and quite dry, Herbert Heller's history book recounted. They ignited readily, and favored by a good breeze, the old fabric was baptized in flame to the eaves in short notice. This was a case of a house literally burning down, as it was half an hour from the time the cupola and roof were enveloped in flames before the lower story got underway. Headlines in the Courier seemed to scream, "Fire, fire, the second Henry County Courthouse burns." The newspaper editor at the time, pictured here on the left, was Elwood Pleas, and he described the panic and painted a gloomy picture for the future. Our friend Samuel Porch was struck on the head by a bundle of books thrown from an upper window, knocking him senseless, Pleas wrote. The naked walls now stand as a relic of departed glory. It is extremely unfortunate that the old roofs should have been destroyed just now. That's why a few find it in their hearts to grieve. We are not, and we suppose cannot, be able to build as good a house as ought to be built for the years to come. So he really was skeptical that anything approaching the second courthouse would ever be built. Thankfully, he was wrong. In 1869, just 4 years after the Civil War ended, the present Henry County Courthouse was completed. The third and present courthouse was completed in just over 4 years' time at a cost of $120,000. We believe it to be the best building of any kind in the West, the Courier reported. There are over 1,700,000 bricks in it. All of the offices are spacious and convenient, and the courtroom above is large and pleasant. Now, as Tom talked about, Frederick Douglass spoke in that courtroom. You go up there today and you can look around, you can kind of imagine what it must have been like for such a pivotal figure in history to be speaking right here in Newcastle. And although the meeting was little advertised, the courthouse was densely crowded, and close attention manifested showed the respect entertained for the distinguished orator. And you can't really see it very well, but and we've got this in our files. It's an article from the Courier that talks about Douglas speaking that night. So we have documentation. He was here.
We should do something and post
Well,
that.
and I, there was a call for new memorial markers 2-3 years ago, and I submitted this, but they wrote back, they denied it. They said I needed more documentation.
But if we had that, what you got there in a picture,
Yeah.
that'd be the hanging in the courtroom upstairs.
Right.
Well, I think they kind of ran him out of town, if I remember right, didn't they?
Well, that was Pendleton.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
Pendleton. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the guys in Greensboro went and helped him
Right.
Yeah,
escape.
hit him
Yeah.
out of the
Good.
Yeah. Yes, sir. You had something?
When did that happen?
It was September of 1876 is when he spoke for the second time. And he came back, and that's kind of what he looked like, or what I think he probably would have looked like then, because he was older, but he came back a free man. Now, the first time he was here, as we're going to see, he was still chasing or running away from slaveholders. Douglas had been here before, and that's a picture of him as a young man. It was Douglas's second appearance in Newcastle. In the summer of 1843, he spoke at the old courthouse in this place, and those who heard the speech remember that he recounted upon that occasion the story of the brutal outrage which was committed upon him at Pendleton a few days before by the Democrats of Madison County. And as this lady had mentioned, he found refuge in Henry County thanks to Seth Henshaw. And it is thought that he spoke in Greensboro, but we don't have the documentation like we do for the speech he gave in the courthouse. The changes which have occurred in the nation since that first time he was here seem marvelous. Then slavery extended in one half of the Union. Upon the occasion of Mr. Douglas's second appearance at Newcastle, he came as an enfranchised citizen. Yeah, there's the date. Frederick Douglass spoke at the Henry County Courthouse in late September 1876. His remarks were made in the circuit courtroom. Douglas's appearance was documented by an article in the Newcastle Courier. When Mr. Douglas appeared before the large audience, he was greeted with hearty applause. He is now about 75 years of age, and his abundant hair is nearly white. He is still vigorous and eloquent, but has lost some of the fire of his youth. But when recounting the wrongs inflicted upon his people by the Ku Klux and White Leaguers of the South, his old fire seemed to come back. The Negro, when called upon to aid the Union, had rallied 200,000 strong. Douglas said, the Democratic Party had in times past been the defender of a hellish crime. My asthma won't leave me alone. The Democratic Party had in times past been the defender of a hellish crime, for which gold sold human flesh on the auction block and sold babies to build churches. That's awful to think about. Henry County's courthouse is the 12th oldest among Indiana counties. Now, I found a website that talked about the dates of the various courthouses. And according to the website IndianaCourthouseSquare.com, Henry County's courthouse, now 156 years in age, ranks 12th on the list of Indiana's oldest. Only Ohio, Fayette, Orange, Jefferson, and St. Joseph, Morgan, Decatur, Ripley, Jennings, and Switzerland, and Steuben have older courthouses. Now, one of the coolest pictures in this presentation is this one. here is General Gross. Now, how many in this court or in this room have stood or walked up those steps? And you've walked up the same steps that General Gross walked up. Photo was taken in 1885, less than 20 years after the Henry County Courthouse opened. General Gross can be seen on the first step at the right. Judge Joshua Mella is at the left across from General Gross. In the second row, second from left, I think this is the gentleman, that is Captain David W. Chambers, whose son, Walter Scott Chambers, would become founding father of the Courier-Times. Thomas Redding, an early expert on archaeology and Indian activity, Indian activity, is just above General Gross with his arm there on the column. And Thomas Redding is who Reddingdale Drive is named after. Beautiful postcard. Herbert Heller wrote, "This columnist at one time photographed about half of the county courthouses of Indiana and can personally testify to the unique and singular architectural beauty of the Henry County building. Although not as massive as some of the other counties, the Henry County structure with its prominent tower is a landmark which has towered over the county for 100 years. Now, of course, it's been 156 years. And we talked about this earlier a little bit. On May 1st, 1877, drunks took the small cannon that was positioned on the courthouse lawn to the Little Mill Saloon and blew out the side of the building. An annex to the existing courthouse was added, as Tom said, in 1905. This photo is from 1911.
I'm going to leave you, but I want to point out a couple of things.
Sure.
And notice in this picture there's no windows or doors on the east side of the building. There are now. They may be closing them back in, but those were added later. And if you go down to Bartholomew County, the designer of this courthouse designed Bartholomew County's courthouse, same architecture, larger scale.
Yeah, does it look about the same as the color?
The windows and the limestone work's about the same, but and the interior, the woodwork and everything is the same.
Thank you. Tom, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. This is the courthouse square in 1913, and this is how it looked downtown the year Catherine Winters disappeared not far from the stately structure. It would have been, Kay, help me here, it would have been just across the street from the courthouse, kind of up that way, right?
Yep.
Dr. Winters, and here again, you can kind of imagine, if you've been on the courthouse steps, which most of you probably have, Dr. Winters was on the courthouse steps yelling, almost in a protest type manner, taking the prosecutor and the judge names in vain, because his son Frankie, this little boy in the middle, was testifying. And he hated it that his little boy was called to testify in this terrible, terrible case. Another picture of how the courthouse square would have looked in 1913. About 100 witnesses were called to testify that October in 1913, including Bird Winters, her mother Margaret Ritter, and Frankie Winters, the little brother. Dr. Winters did not want Frankie to testify. He begged court officials to leave the little brother out of it. But Frankie did testify. As he did, Dr. Winters strode back and forth in front of the courthouse, yelling in protest, waving Frankie's subpoena over his head and taking prosecutor H.H. Evans and Judge Ed Jackson's names in vain. Frankie was only on the stand a short time. Jackson dismissed the grand jury after 2 weeks, and no one was indicted. Thank you. Does Ed Jackson's name sound familiar to anyone? He later became governor of Indiana. So Newcastle has had a governor. And unfortunately, well, he did some good things. He was an advocate of state parks, and I think he really contributed to the state park system. But his tenure was scandal-ridden because he was connected to the KKK, and it's very unfortunate. If you've seen Ricky Cotman's book on Black history, this is on the cover. And these gentlemen were black soldiers ready to enlist and serve their country in World War I. And again, you can kind of think, gosh, I've been on those steps, and that's where those gentlemen were seated. This is something Gene Ingram taught me. I thought that was like the interurban, but it was not. A purely local affair was the old Dinky. They called it the Dinky, which operated from the business district of Newcastle to the south part of town along 14th Street. The off-scorn city car was put in service to take care of transporting employees of the Krell French Piano Company, and later those of Maxwell Briscoe and Hoosier cabinet workers, to these factories. So if you can imagine, you go back in time, you might see this very slowly moving along, taking workers to their jobs. The Dinky was finally abandoned during the administration of Mayor Straub Hayes, who asked that it be continued about 1928. Here's an aerial view of the courthouse past, and I'm not sure if I have a date on this or not, but right there is the First Christian Church. I always thought this was a cool picture because how many times have we gone past the statue there in front of the courthouse? This is the day that it was dedicated. Photo captures the moments after the locally iconic courthouse soldier statue was unveiled, May of 1924. Then a lot of interesting things happened in the courthouse and around it. This Plymouth was parked across from the courthouse in 1953, celebrating the 1 millionth Plymouth built in Indiana. Oh, I'm sorry. More than 150 parts of that car were manufactured in Newcastle. That's a picture of the courthouse in the 1950s. I have this artwork in my home, and probably others do too. I don't know if anybody here has that, but during her extraordinary life, Elizabeth Todd Schaefer was a true artistic gift to Henry County. She painted the portraits of General Omar and Ada Bundy in Bundy Auditorium, and you guys, have you seen those portraits when you go in? But this is a scene of the courthouse down through the years. I think that's the Courier Times right there at the bottom. Right.
Yeah.
Now, Tom talked about the courthouse at Christmas. This painting by Elizabeth Dodge Schaefer shows what Christmas celebrations of the past look like in downtown Newcastle. And the painting was featured on the cover of Newcastle Pictorial History in its second and third printings. That picture was taken a couple of years ago, and as Tom said, I think they've done a nice job. They've tried to mirror what things used to be like on the courthouse lawn at Christmas time. I thought that might be Tom when I first saw that picture.
That's
Can
kind
you-
of scary.
Oh, can you imagine? Guy's braver than I am. I'm not sure who that is, unfortunately, but.
He's not looking down, that's good.
He's on a skinny ladder, too.
You think about all the things that have happened over the years on the courthouse lawn. And
That's my mother and brother in that picture.
is it really?
Right by Santa. It is.
So right there, and right there.
Picture, Aunt Phyllis.
I'm glad to know that. I've always wondered if we could identify any of those. So that's your mother, and how old was
My
your
brother, yeah, my brother Tim.
how old would your brother have
He
been?
would have been, well, we moved away when,
Born in
yeah,
50.
he was born in 50. 50. He was
He was
born in
born
1950.
1950.
Yeah.
Well, how about that? That's
How about that?
that's fun. That's fun to know. Some of you may remember this ceremony that they had. Mark Sean Orr was a driving force behind getting a Raintree County marker on the courthouse lawn. And the event drew such a crowd that Main Street in front of the courthouse had to be closed for seating. We had the Government Affairs Liaison for the Office of Senator Dan Coates, Paul Lagerman, Indiana State Rep. Tom Saunders, Mayor Greg York, Commissioners Kim Cronk and Butch Baker, along with a full orchestra and special guest singers and actors from the 1957 film. Oh, I'm sorry. How many have seen the film? In talking with Larry Lockridge, the son of Ross Lockridge, the movie process was just terrible. And Larry wasn't very fond of the movie.
The book is good.
Yeah. They planted a rain tree during that ceremony, and here are some of the people that were involved in planting the tree. When Tom officially retired, they had a celebration for him in the courthouse, which was very appropriate, obviously, for him to talk about his experience there. And that's his brother, and that's his sister, and that's his aunt. But I've always liked that picture. I took that picture and thought it was kind of cool that they honored him in the place that he spent so much time and did so much good work. I took this picture, and I'm not eager to go back up there, to be honest with you. Ken Johnson, a maintenance employee for the county, prepares to ring the courthouse bell in honor of Veterans Day. It was a local observance of a national event. The National Bells of Peace featured places all over the nation ringing at 11 a.m. in memory and honor of World War I's end, with the armistice signed at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. In addition to honoring the 25 Henry County soldiers who died in World War I, the tolling of the bells served as a salute to all local servicemen and women past and present, helping keep us free. This is a cool photo. How many are Harry Potter fans? Does that not look like Albus Dumbledore?
Oh, yeah, it does.
That is Robert, Indiana. He was born Robert Clark, and he was born in Newcastle. And this love image is popular all around the world. In fact, there was a postage stamp that had that image on it. And so it was Aaron Dickin and Dick Bauslaw who contacted him, and he came here, and they went to his place before he died. And I think Aaron took this picture here. I always thought that was a cool picture.
Do you know what year that was?
That would have been probably around 2015, I want to say. I could be a little off on that, but somewhere in that area. Well, I appreciate your bearing with me with my coughing, and appreciate the fact that you're here. We're the oldest continuously operating historical society and museum of its kind in Indiana. There's our Facebook page, website. Come see us. You can call me anytime if you have my cell phone number. If you want it, I'll gladly give it to you. I have been bitten by the history bug. I think I was first bitten by the history bug in '82, thanks to Doug Majors. And I'm a hopeless case now. So, but thank you all very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments or stories that they have about their experiences at the courthouse?
Got a question. You had the list of the counties that had older. How many of those are still functioning as courthouses?
Oh, now that's a good question. I don't know. It didn't specify. I guess I was assuming that they were all still functioning in some way. But, I think they've done a marvelous job here with making the best use of space. And I remember Eldon Pitts, who I miss terribly. He was a great guy, always fun to talk to. But Eldon was so impressed with how the new Justice Center blended in with the courthouse. He was very, very impressed by that. Anybody else?
I don't know if other people have heard this myth or not, but I heard multiple times that there was a tunnel running from the courthouse to the jail, but I've since, talked to many people that that's not true. Have any of you heard that?
I've heard that many times too, but the old jail, I had actually crawled in all kinds of little dark places in that long before it was tore down, and there was nothing in the basement that indicated that a tunnel came from any place. There was underneath the main cell block, it looked like some chamber from the Dark Ages that actually had like manacle things on the walls, but part of the basement had collapsed long before. So it's hard to, it's like, did they really lock people up down here? Who knows? Because much of it was partially filled in, but there was places on the walls with big steel rings mounted in it, so it makes you wonder. But I didn't see anything. And I would have thought that when they redid Broad Street, they would have dug in some of it.
You would. Yeah, that's a good idea. Good point.
I've always been kind of looking for signs that would say that is real, but and in the courthouse itself, if you go down to the basement, I don't see anything that's been plastered over that would indicate.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think so. Not saying it didn't happen, and maybe it was. They wished that. I know when I worked there, I wished there was tunnels many times, but I don't think there was.
My brother Ron worked for the State Board of Accounts for many years, and he had an office down in the basement of the courthouse. I'll have to ask him next time I see him. Hey, Ron, tell me, is there a secret passageway somewhere?
I've asked the current commissioners, and they've all been down there looking as well, and from what they've said, they have the same opinion. There's nothing down there to...
And if you look how the courthouse sets, the tunnel would have had to, after it came under Broad Street, it would have had to make a pretty abrupt incline, because the basement level is almost at the sidewalk level, just a little below it. So that would have been a pretty abrupt incline there. And I would, like I said, I would have thought, when they ripped Broad Street up, that they would have found something. But I know in the really old jail, not the current old jail, But I explored that thing all over the place, and it was pretty amazing. And I wish I'd taken videos and stuff of it back then. I did take still pictures of the jail, of the upstairs, the jail cells before they tore it down.
If anybody wants to see a picture of the old jail that he's talking about, it is in the pictorial history book. And it is a cool looking building, really.
Yeah.
The museum did have Larry Lockridge do a talk, and it was in the courtroom. And that was a nice setting for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then First Nighters, which is our civic.
I'm glad you brought that up, yes.
Had To Kill a Mockingbird, which is all a court scene.
Did
So
Jerry
everybody
Horn
liked-
direct that? Was that Jerry Horn who directed that?
I don't know.
I know she was involved in something with the
But all the
courthouse
people
dramatic.
that came, they were a part of, in a way, kind of a part of the play because they were in the courtroom,
What a great setting. What a great setting for especially a play like that.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad that, as Tom had alluded to, that the commissioners and county officials are taking care of this. Because you read so often about buildings that are no longer with us or in disrepair. I think the field house and how the wigwam is no more. Is that right? And thank goodness we're going to have a field house for years and years to come. Anybody else? Well, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your support of the Henry County Historical Society. There is a donation place out there. If you care to donate, maybe you could donate a little bit for the cough drops for the former